Welcome to Withdraw Consent. I'm Jack. Today I want to talk about the different branches of Judaism, and let me tell you why I want to do that. The next episode on Wednesday is going to be about people who are religiously Jewish and the actual prevalence or lack of prevalence of P-word stuff involving children, okay? And I'm going to be a little light with my language here because the previous on a previous episode where I talked about people of that religion and their prevalence in the adult corn industry, I had that video taken down on YouTube, so I'm going to try to be nice with the language here, but we know what we're talking about. So you may look at different videos and you're like, okay, so say you know Ben Shapiro, and you're like, but he's not the Jew in New York in the tunnels. He's definitely not that guy because they're different branches. They're doing different things, right? When you see like a video in Israel and you see some rabbis hanging Palestinian flags to protest the genocide in Gaza, and you see the IDF beating them down and pushing them around, well, we've got different branches of Judaism going on here with different values, right? And so what we're going to end up with is one group of Jews. Now, we're just talking about the religion. We're not talking ethnicity or any of that. We're just talking about the religion. One group of Jews who's pro-Zionist and not really doing the stuff with the kids. They might, but not really. They don't tend to. And then you're going to have the other side that's going to be anti-Zionist, but then they're going to be more likely to do the kid stuff with the kids and in the tunnels, right? And so basically, I want to break down the branches to you, and I got a lot of interesting stuff too. And we're going to break down the populations in the United States, populations in Israel, and see what we got. That'll lead into Wednesday's episode where we're going to actually talk about the actual, because we've looked at the verses in Talmud that allow the stuff with the children. But the question is, how much is it? And how much is it in practice? And that has to do with the religion. Okay, so there's basically three branches to this religion. And they're kind of new, like it used to just kind of be a monolith, but it's definitely not a monolith now. And so I got a reference below if you want to see more details about this, because I'm not going to go into the history of how it broke off and stuff like that. You could do a 40-minute below by a guy who converted to Judaism. And that video is fairly accurate, except for he's kind of tricky when he talks about the Khazaria stuff. And then when he talks about the verses about the P-word stuff with the children in the Talmud, he says, well, those are taken out of context, even though they're quite clear, and they're just used for anti-Semitism, as if there are people who don't like the P-word stuff and they would just be violently enraged by hearing that, anyways, don't become violently enraged. But so basically you got these three branches. And I'm going to put a graph up on the screen. I screenshot it from the video below, giving them full reference. You can watch this video below. And then basically you can see that you have Reform on the left, Conservative in the middle, and Orthodox on the right. And so basically how one of these different branches is different than each other is on how they view Jewish law, their relationship to Jewish law. So on the right, you can see the Orthodox Jews, and they think that Jewish law is binding and that it's unchangeable. So then they would be like the fundamentalists. And then in the middle, you have the conservatives, and the conservatives think that Jewish law is binding, but it's changeable. And then on the left, you have the Reformed Jews, and they think that the law is not binding and it is also changeable. So basically what you have here is if you talk about the Orthodox Jews on the right, and their law says that they can't eat prongs, okay, then they can never eat prongs. They just never will. If it's the last food on the planet, maybe they will. And if they do because they have to survive, then they're not walking with God. But on the left, you can change anything you want in Jewish law on the Reform side, right? So you can say, okay, well, climate change is a very, very real thing. And beef is very poor for the climate. So I'm just going to eat all prongs. And you could still be considered walking with God. So you can change things around however you want. And so let's talk about the two main issues that I discussed in the beginning of this, which is Zionism and the P-word stuff with the kids, okay? So when you go to Zionism, you have the people who are Orthodox on the right, and they say that it literally has to happen the way that the Talmud and the Torah say. And you can't make your way into the future land for this people, right? So they reject Zionism. Now, as you can see, the people on the left, the Reform people, where everything's changeable and not really binding, and they're like, yeah, no, this is good. Let's just do a genocide and it's okay. So then they become the Zionists, right? Now, basically, if you want to make a categorization, which I need to do later when I talk about the populations in Israel, but basically Progressive Judaism, it encompasses both Reform and Conservative Judaism, right? So they're both in one camp and Orthodox in another camp. Now there is interchangeability in such a way, like the guy who converted in the video, he converted at one of these ones on the left, but then when he did his year of study and then he went to get like whatever they do to you to make you a full Jew, he went to an Orthodox temple to do it. So there is some of that. There's not like a hard line. I'm not trying to pretend like that's a thing. And so basically, let's talk about the numbers. So in the United States, you have 7.5 million Jews in the United States, right? And you have 4.2 million adults who follow Judaism. And now I'm guessing all these 4.2 million adults who follow Judaism aren't necessarily all of the 7.5, because there could be a percentage of the 4.2 that's converts, like the guy in the video, even though the guy in the video was from Canada. But so basically, of the 4.2 million, so 7.5 million Jews, ethnically is what they're claiming. 4.2 million people in the country follow Judaism. Of that, the video below says 50% follow Reform Judaism, 30% follow Conservative Judaism, and 20% follow Orthodox Judaism. So I did a little looking into those numbers to see if that was correct, and I don't think that's correct, because there was a study from 2013 that said that only 10% of practicing Jews in the United States were Orthodox Jews. And then there was another study from 21, I believe, and it said that 9%, so kind of unchanged, 9% of Jews practicing Judaism in the United States, or people practicing Judaism in the United States, were Orthodox. So if you look at the actual number of Orthodox Jews, you would look at about 420,000 to, well, we'll just go with the 10% number because it's kind of nice and round. So we're looking at 420,000 Orthodox, and then in the entire progressive, which encompasses both the Reform and the Conservative, you're looking at 307. What is that? 3,780,000. And so that's what we got with numbers. So when you're looking in the United States and you're looking at like the Orthodox Jews, now these are the people with the locks and then the hats on, not the tiny hats. The tiny hats are the progressives. So Ben Shapiro is on the Zionist side over here with the progressives, which is the majority of practicing Jews in the United States, the 90%, right? And then only 10% are the people with the locks and then the hats, the people that you find in the tunnels, running out of the tunnels in New York, you know? And I feel like in the United States, the Orthodox population is so small that unless you live in New York City, which if you're a Jew, you're almost likely to, you know, there's a good chance. I didn't look at the numbers for New York, but I know it's very high. But if you're just like a Jew in just wherever, California, we'll say, right? And you see one of my videos about the P word stuff with the kids, and you see me quoting the Talmud about it, but you're one of these progressive Jews and you've never been exposed to that. They haven't even showed you those verses. Remember, it takes 7 years to read the Talmud. So if they choose not to show you and you're not reading it on your own, you're just a regular synagogue goer, you might not even know this stuff exists. So then you see some weirdo on the internet, me, and quoting the Talmud, you're like, that's a lie. That's a lie. So that's why you get Jews, in my opinion, that's why you get some Jews in the comments who are just saying this stuff's not true. Well, I mean, I quoted it and you could look at the reference in the description. It's 100% true, but they're like, no, it's not true, because they don't have any access to those Orthodox communities where stuff is going on. So let's talk about Israel real fast, okay? The entire population of Israel is 9.7 million people, plus excludes like Gaza and stuff like that. Of the 9.7 million Israeli citizens, 7.2 million are ethnic Jews, so they have 2.5 million Arabs living in there. Of the 7.2 million people who claim to be ethnic Jews, you have basically 50% of them are secular. That leaves 3.6 million practicing Jews in Israel, which is, I mean, a little over a third of the population. And then of those, they don't differentiate when they're factoring this in, whether or not people are Reform or Conservative. They just say progressive versus Orthodox. So then they're 50-50 progressive or Orthodox. So if we're looking at 7.2 million total ethnic Jews, 3.6 million people following Judaism, and then you're looking at 1.8 million progressives and 1.8 million Orthodox Jews. Now, if you do the math on that, 1.8 million is, I believe, a sixth of the population of Israel, approximately. So 1.6 million people, 1/6 of their population is in the Orthodox side, which is the side that's more likely to be anti-Zionist and more tendency to do the P word stuff with the children, okay? Compare that to the United States, where we said 420,000. So now we're looking at about 0.6% of the population of the United States. So it's very small in the United States and much more likely to go under the radar. On Wednesday's episode, we're going to find out how prevalent it is in Israel, because you're talking about 1/6 of the population being Orthodox, which has the tendencies for the P word stuff. Okay. And then also I want to note that when I said 7.2 million ethnic Jews in Israel, but only half of them are secular. I mean, half of them are secular, but the half that are secular also tend to be very pro-Zionist, even though they don't get that from the source of the religion of Judaism, because they probably likely moved there on the right to return, to reclaim the nation and this and that. So their political ideology would already match with the Zionism, compared to a random Jewish person in the United States who has not done the right of return and traveled all the way to the Middle East to live there and do mandatory military service and stuff. So the secular, so of the Jews in Israel, the half that's secular is pro-Zionist, and then the quarter that's of the total Jewish population, the quarter that's progressive is also Zionist. So that leaves about, a 3-to-1 ratio of Zionist to anti-Zionist based on their religion in the country. So it's easy to see from a United States perspective why you wouldn't want an Orthodox person living next door to you or in your neighborhood. Like, that's very easy to see. I want to see a lot of examples of that Wednesday of how that actually works. But you could look at this and be like, well, don't be too hard on Jews. Practicing Jews of the Jewish faith, not the Jewish people, just people who practice Judaism. Don't be too hard on Judaism in the United States, because 9 out of 10 of them are just these Zionists. They're not into the kid stuff. Only you can't talk bad about the 1 out of 10, because as if that's part of the group. But the deal is this: when it comes to a people with a religion that promotes another country over the country that they currently live in, like if they want to practice Judaism, the progressive Jews, and they say, well, right of return, we want to go to Israel, go for it. That's fine. You know what I mean? Absolutely fine. But stay in the host country and then advocate for a foreign country over the country you're in, still can't be my neighbor. So in my opinion, it's not a justification at all. So that's what I got for you on Wednesday. I already told you what we're going to discuss. On Thursday, I have one of the most fantastic episodes I'm ever going to create, right? It's going to be another one about Iran, and you might be bored of Iran, but this is going to be fascinating. I literally got into this, and everybody that you think is the bad guy, everybody that you think is the good guy in Iran is the bad guy. Everybody that you think the bad guy is not necessarily the good guy, but they're definitely not as bad as they say. And there's promoting self-determinism of the Iranian people, so I can't contest it because I'm not going to get involved in somebody's foreign stuff. To the point that PBD podcast is literally pushing for a CIA coup, just like the previous coup it's insane story that the CIA did in Iran that led to the takeover of the embassy in 1979, where they were trying to reenact their self-determination because we were stealing their oil. It's going to be a fantastic episode. I mean, I just can't believe how little I knew about this until I was researching it this week, and how it just brings the entire picture of what's going on in the Middle East together. Anyways, that's what I got for you. Hope to see you next time.